Welcome to No More Podcast, bringing you interesting knowledge and ideas that will keep you informed and inspired.
All right, let's dive right into the Tower of London. You guys gave me a ton of material for this one, historical records, ghost stories, even tourist guides. So we've got quite the mission ahead of us to separate the must-know facts from well, let's be honest, the juiciest stories.
You know, it's interesting because the Tower of London, it's not just a castle. I mean, it's been a fortress, obviously.
A palace.
A prison, sure, but also a royal mint and even a zoo.
Wait, a zoo? Like with lions and tigers and bears? Oh my. But seriously, can you imagine? This place was both a royal residence, a prison.
Yeah, it's pretty wild, but that's actually key to understanding the tower. That duality, power A&D vulnerability, celebration and despair, life and death, all in one place.
Right, two sides of the same coin. Okay, so let's go back to the beginning. Back to William the Conqueror of the 1070s. Now, this wasn't just some random castle. He had a vision, right?
Oh, absolutely. William had just won the Battle of Hastings, and he needed to solidify his control over England, so he builds this massive tower out of imported stone, no less. It dominated the London skyline. It was a statement, you know, I'm in charge, and don't you forget it.
It must have been awe-inspiring. And maybe a little terrifying. Before we move on, you mentioned Henry III painted the central keep white. So the White Tower we know today, it wasn't always white.
Nope, not at all. That's a later addition. One of those little details that makes history so fascinating.
It's amazing how these things evolve over time. And speaking of evolving, other monarchs expanded the tower too, right?
Exactly. Henry III and then Edward I, they added those curtain walls, the smaller towers, and they made the moat way wider. They basically turned it into England's strongest concentric castle.
Wow, they weren't messing around. Okay, so as we move through the tower's history, we can't ignore the realities of life and death within its walls. For royalty, it must have been pretty opulent, right? I mean, you mentioned exotic animals.
Oh, yeah, it was lavish, huge feast, the beautiful Chapel Royal.
Yeah.
And yeah, they had a menagerie of exotic animals.
Wow, real contrast. Because for the prisoners, it must have been a completely different story.
Totally different. It's actually a powerful symbol, how those two realities were intertwined. Like, take Anne Boleyn. In 1533, she arrives at the tower, this huge procession, getting ready for her coronation as Henry VIII's queen.
Yeah, and 3 years later, she's back, but this time as a prisoner, held captive in those same luxurious lodgings, before being executed on Tower Green. Chilling.
It is, isn't it? And then there's the mystery of the princes in the tower. The two skeletons found there, most likely them. It's a stark reminder of the tower's darker side.
It's like a constant reminder that power can be fleeting, and that even within those grand walls, there were some truly dark events. We're talking Elizabeth I, Guy Fawkes, even 20th century spies. I think we have a lot about Guy Fawkes in these sources.
Definitely. After the gunpowder plot, his imprisonment and interrogation at the tower, that solidified the tower's reputation as the place where the state dealt with its enemies.
The ultimate symbol of power and, intimidation. Okay, I think it's time to face the more spectral side of the tower, ready to get a little spooky.
I think our listener's been waiting for this. It seems the tower's history, it's left a mark in the form of countless ghost stories and paranormal accounts. Headless apparitions, chilling sensations, even phantom animals roaming the grounds.
Okay, let's start with the most famous ghost, Anne Boleyn. Her headless ghost is said to appear to guards. And there's even a story about a soldier who tried to stab her ghost with a bayonet. But it's even creepier. There have been sightings of a ghostly procession in St. Peter's Chapel, where Anne is buried.
So many Anne Boleyn sightings. It's like her spirit is tied to the tower. You know, one account that really stood out to me was E.L. Swift's description of the glass tube ghost. What do you think of that one?
Oh, yeah, Swift. He was the keeper of the crown jewels back in the 1800s, right? And he wrote about some pretty terrifying experiences.
Exactly. And his position gives his account some weight, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, he wasn't just some random tourist. Didn't he also describe seeing a devilish bear?
He did, and some people believe it may have even caused a death. It's amazing how these accounts offer a glimpse into the fear and the fascination that the tower's supernatural side inspired.
Right, like a window into the past. But Anne's not the only restless spirit, right?
Oh, definitely not. There's the mysterious white woman in the White Tower. People say she evokes a sense of dread in anyone who encounters her. And then there's the presence that seems to linger around Henry VIII's armor.
Oh, yeah. I read about that. Guards feeling suffocated, choked, as if some unseen force is trying to crush them in that specific room. That sends chills down my spine just thinking about it.
It's pretty intense.
It really makes you wonder, what kind of energy or memories these spirits are carrying with them?
It's a question that's fascinated people for centuries. But let's not forget about some of the other famous ghosts. The tower has seen its fair share of tragedy. And it seems like many of those who met their end there have decided to stick around. You know, it's interesting how many of the tower's ghosts are women. Like their tragic fates just echo through the centuries.
Yeah, it's true. Like Lady Jane Grey, the 9 Days Queen, executed at just 17, and Arbella Stewart, imprisoned for marrying for love. They say she haunts the Queen's house.
It's a reminder that the tower wasn't just about politics and power, but also about these personal tragedies, these women caught in the crossfire.
Yeah, pawns in a much bigger game. Speaking of figures from history, we can't forget Thomas Becket, the Archbishop of Canterbury. Legend has it he actually messed with the construction of Traitor's Gate back in the 1270s.
Wow, really? Seems like he wasn't afraid to make his presence known.
Even in the afterlife. And then there's the princes in the tower, those 2 young boys, imprisoned and most likely murdered by their own uncle Richard III.
That story is just heartbreaking. And the fact that their bones were probably found centuries later, buried beneath the staircase, it adds another layer to the tragedy.
Talk about a haunting reminder of the past. Oh, and Sir Walter Raleigh, the explorer. Wasn't he imprisoned in the tower multiple times?
He was. And some say he's been seen roaming the tower, maybe even holding his own head.
Yikes, it's a little much. But let's move on to a slightly less terrifying legend. The ravens.
Ah, yes, the ravens. More than just birds, wouldn't you say?
They're practically a symbol of the tower itself, with that legend that if they ever leave, the kingdom will fall.
Such a fascinating blend of superstition and tradition, and to this day, the tower has a raven master who takes care of them, even clips their wings to make sure they don't fly away.
Talk about job security. So we've talked about the tower's past.
Yeah.
But what about the present? It's still a functioning place, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's a thriving community and a world-leading attraction. You've got the yeoman warders and their families living there, the resident governor, a garrison of soldiers.
Wow. I can't imagine actually living within those walls.
It really shows how the tower has evolved. It embraces both its history and its present. There's even a doctor, a chaplain, and a pub there.
A pub. Now that's my kind of history.
And of course, we can't forget the ceremony of the keys.
Right, that nightly ritual that's been going on for over 700 years.
It's more than just a tourist attraction. It's this carefully choreographed ritual, done the same way for centuries, a direct link to the tower's past.
I mean, just thinking about everything that's happened in the tower. Royal celebrations, executions, ghosts. It's no wonder it's considered one of the most haunted places in the world.
It really is. And you know, I think that's why we're so drawn to it, to the tower's mysteries, the legends, the ghosts.
Yeah.
Because they give us this glimpse into the past, a past that feels both familiar and completely alien.
Yeah, it's like we're trying to understand these echoes of power, ambition, love, loss, all playing out against this backdrop of a fortress that stood for centuries, silently witnessing it all.
Exactly. And maybe that's why the Tower of London remains such a powerful symbol. It's a place where history and imagination blur, where the past feels almost tangible.
And where the line between the living and the dead feels just a little bit thinner. Okay, so before we wrap up, I have to ask, given everything we've talked about, all the history, the chilling tales, do you think the tower's ghost stories are just entertainment? Or do they offer a real glimpse into the emotional weight of its history?
That's a great question. Maybe they're a bit of both. I mean, history is full of tragedy. And it's only natural for us to want to connect with those who came before, even if it's through stories that give us chills.
I love that. A blend of history and mystery. Well, folks, it seems we've only scratched the surface of the Tower of London's captivating history and chilling lore. But that's all the time we have for today. Until next time, stay curious. And keep those lanterns lit. You never know what might be lurking in the shadows.